Okay, so I wanted to talk about Hell the Last Saga and why I'm as excited about this game. Now, as I mentioned in previous videos, I demoed Hell the Last Saga, the demo campaigns scenarios on Tabletop Simulator in the con, the Essen Spiel virtual con, and I've also played them a bit just outside, either solo or whatever it might be, and that really. Just demoing them for myself in a previous convention really made it so, yeah, this is a game I'm really interested in. But it was kind of going back over the Kickstarter campaign and some of those stretch goals and some of the updates, which really made it, yeah, actually, there's something really good about this and something I really want to find out about. So that's what I was going to do today. I'll just make sure there's chat available. So, okay. So, I'm going to start with the updates, and I'm going to go through those updates and talk about how that changes the things that we've seen on the Tabletop Simulator mod. Obviously, which is I'm really pleased about, they're keeping a lot of things close to their chest, Mythic Games, and not telling us about what the characters are, how much they go into the story. They've given us a few sneaks and talking about the team playtesting different types of scenarios, some expedition scenarios. They talked about a few weeks ago the one going through some underground tunnels, so a very different looking tile layout, which could be a very different type of scenario. So it's very much going to be some different things going on. But I think some of the clues as to some really interesting things that could be happening in the game, which I didn't really think about until I started going back over those Kickstarter updates. Really important to think about. So first of all, we got the second update from the campaign, which was talking about how well the campaign went and smashing those first few stretch goals. And they talked about the idea of the 3D representation of the bonfire. So that's completely cosmetic, of course. And a lot of these stretch goals were, of course, cosmetic. What I loved about how they ran Hell the Last Saga Kickstarter campaign was they basically said, the game is done, so there's not going to be expansion content that's going to be chucked on top that will be like expansions. It will literally be, this is the game. We've already decided what that's kind of going to be, the bare bones of it's going to be, and we will give you that. All the stretch goals, all of the add-ons will just be cosmetic, effectively. So I really like that. I thought that was a really, really nice move, because you're not worried about missing out on bits, and you're not worried about the cost spiraling out of control. So yeah, I thought just from the offset, I thought that was fantastic. And then Leo was doing his lives, of course, all the way through it, which are always fantastic to watch. So yeah, a bonfire, great. These bags, again, just a nice little touch. It means that you've got all of those tokens, so threat tokens and things like that. You can literally just chuck them in there and then pull them out because it needs to be random. You've got to be a little. The only thing about this, which is not 100% sure, is obviously on the back of the hostile token is the pips, and if you draw it out of the bag, you're not going to know if you're drawing it out as the correct way round or revealing the pips. So again, that's going to be quite hard to do. Now, I don't think, we will find out from some future updates, but I don't think they're doing plastic threat tokens, if I remember rightly. Obviously, if there were threat tokens and they were slightly raised, the detail, you could feel what side was which. But in terms of just tokens themselves, that could be the only issue with the bags. Obviously, you can store them in there, but which is what they're saying that's what they're for. But it'd be quite nice to have like just grabbing out of the bag and then put them on. But no, I don't think that's going to work quite as well. But what's really cool, a bit like Scythe, is the resources got replaced with tokens. And we'll see in a later update to actually colour these. So these are going to be coloured plastics to help you, so you don't have to paint them. So they got the wood, and we'll notice some other ones as well. Then we've got some of the hostiles, and talking about those. The totems, instead of tokens, they will have miniatures, so you have these 3D renders. I hope they keep the tokens in as well as the miniatures. So it does say we are upgrading them to totems to make it more easily discernible. Not 100% sure. Not 100% sure if they're going to continue to keep all these tokens in, so all the resources and everything else, or if it is all going to be miniature based. I don't know. But that's something to think about. Obviously, like always, it's English and then French. Obviously, as the funding went up, the stretch goals kept toppling, and then they brought out some alternate sculpts, which I always appreciate, especially being a painter. You get a bit lethargic of painting the same sculpt 6-8 times. So having 2 different sculpts really changes things up. So I really appreciate that a lot of alternate sculpts have been done. Again, a resource token for food has been changed to plastic tokens as well. And then we had our first NPC. So what's really important is this is a story-driven campaign. They said it's going to be 3 acts, and you can think of those as 3 different stories kind of intertwining together of what we've heard in terms of information so far. And you're going to meet these NPCs along the way. So all of these miniatures are replacing the tokens. So these NPCs have always been put into the story. They were never out of it. What I love about this is the stretch goals are you're getting miniatures for those tokens, which is going to really help the immersion, because what you kind of don't want, in my opinion, is you don't want your kind of like main miniatures and then you got these tokens and you kind of meet in that. I don't know if that will quite be the same. So I really do appreciate it myself for having these miniatures for these NPCs. And we've got Nut the leper, so obviously being an outcast. They give us a little bit of information up here. Along the way, someone else makes their arrival, the one named Nut, and they'll have stories driven to them and how you deal with them and what you might do. And there's going to be a fair amount of, I guess, voting systems in the game, it seems. And a future update talks about how the solo mode and how they deal with that. Anyway, so again, we've got some alternate sculpts for the pests. Just absolutely brilliant, the sculpts. The tokens, they did say here that the morale tokens, whereas these are the saga tokens, so unless they're going to be the same, I don't know. But effectively, basically resources are going to be plastic tokens. Then another NPC, this guy's really quite cool. Pursuit through the night, followed in the footsteps of legend of the land where Iglok still upholds his vigil. For some reason, he left the gates of his hometown at fateful morning to find the evil spirit of Anaba, the fire bear. Torgut's White will rest in peace once this exodus beyond the lands. So, what it sounds like is almost like a video game where you go to a side mission, if you like, or a main mission, and you'll speak to an NPC, right? And then sometimes those NPCs follow you on missions. That's my prediction of what these NPCs are kind of going to be done. So you'll meet them in different ways, or they might even come to your camp, and then you'll go on these scenarios, these missions, with them to help them. We might even be able to choose different types of missions from a range of different ones, depending on what we want to focus on. Then we have another alternate sculpts again. This one was painted by Seb Levine, and he went through a tutorial, which is pretty cool. Then we got the wound tokens upgraded to plastic. They look really nice, look like runes, really. So lots of upgrades, but what I found really interesting about this update was the first 2 NPCs, and that's, we haven't been told about any of the NPCs in terms of even their cardboard, and I like the fact they haven't given too much away. Right, moving on, we've got, let's get to this one. Hang on, give me 2 seconds while I just bring open this. So next, song for the... Oh, this was the first song released that they said about doing, obviously, the soundtrack. And I think we've had 2 so far in terms of the idea. I think there's going to be 13, I believe it said in the final stretch goals. I love that again. I really do enjoy having a bit of background atmosphere in the game. I do appreciate that, and I would normally do that anyway. when we play those games. So that's going to be really quite cool. Then we're moving on to... Sorry, just give me 2 seconds. Cool. Then we're moving on to... oh, sorry, what I was going to say about that is when I was doing the demos, the people I was demoing to, they actually said they do that as well when they do these game groups, especially for narrative games, to bring about that kind of atmosphere, which I think is really cool. Another NPC, the Revenant, with a strange wolf cloak, it says. In fact, let's read it. A tattered page of Father Brudo's journal has been found on the rock, half eaten by mould. And then it gives you a little bit of an idea about Treetop Wands. And what do we do? What do we do? And how does he come into the situation? Again, this interaction with the NPCs is going to be awesome. They are the game's NPCs. The rest you'll have to discover on your own. So I really like, the fact that they are doing this. So just be aware. Now, they might well join your clan. In which case, it says about survivor token. So as you try and find your clan, because obviously the demo scenarios that they're letting us play on Tabletop Simulator, which will be different to the final thing, they've already said that. They are survivors, okay? And we're already trying to find our clan, right? So these could be King Hacken's, part of King Hacken's group that came over the year before, and then they're interacting with different ways, and they've had different experiences on the island, and then how you deal with that might give you different endings. It's all very unknown, of course, but it's really quite cool to see. Then the first model for the camp phase came out. So as you'll be aware, the second scenario is the camp phase. So you've got a static board, okay, that never changes. That camp board never changes, and they've already said that. Unlike the expedition scenarios, which will be playing tiles, different orientations to do different kind of scenarios, and that's where I believe that's where the NPCs will really come in. Now, the granary is the first one, and as you would imagine, if you're setting up a camp and a settlement in terms of your home, you're going to need to get food, and you're going to need to survive. Now, in the scenarios themselves, the fake cards, which happen every round, they don't tend to deal with food much. How you deal with food is for special abilities and for familiars. Hey, Board Game Dungeon. Yes. So I've got this hell coming, yes. And I'm really excited about it. But I think the excitement's growing as I read through the different parts and these different updates. And which really what I wanted this video to be, and this live stream. And if anyone else's experiences or what they're thinking as we go through these things, just chuck it on the chat, and then we'll talk about it. So the granary kind of makes sense. I think obviously it's quite a hostile land. I think we get the idea of that. I mean, obviously the gods have given the message for King Hacken to go there to the promised land, as it were, to really seek the fortunes and settle. And it does seem pretty inhospitable. So I think the idea is the granary is there to store your food. And I'm pretty much guaranteed, well, I'm not guaranteed, but I'm pretty sure you're going to have, well, there are going to be camp scenarios where things are going to happen. And people might try and get into your camp. And they might be trying to raid your stores from your granary, for example. So I think the buildings that you have in your camp and your settlement will determine the type of scenarios that might take place and the different stories that might come on. And again, this is all my thoughts and predictions are based on absolutely no evidence other than what's on these updates. So that was the first building as a miniature rather than a token, and you'll notice a lot. In fact, all of the buildings I think were upgraded through stretch goals, which is going to look awesome on the board, obviously. Then the youngest one. So again, another survivor, and he looks like a gladiator, which is really cool. This sculpt's so cool. He's got like a totem attached to his back. He's got the two swords. He does look like a Roman gladiator, but then he's got obviously the Nordic tattoos and everything else, but it looks pretty boss. But back in the village, he was the one who would boast his sword fighting to no end, so much he would at times be regarded as the greatest liar. He would climb up on a platform each and every morning and yelled, "I will slay the greatest dragons with my blade, and will carry its head as some wear their tunic. This is the only opponent I have yet to fell." So, thinks a lot of himself as the ultimate warrior. But again, how does that how's that come into the story? We don't know, and that's going to be the great thing about this game. They've got a team of writers, and we're talking about professional writers writing this story, and I'm very confident it's going to be exceptionally good. I really like the ones that we got on Tabletop Simulator, and it's only going to be better than that. So really exciting to wait for that one. So another NPC, okay. Then we move on to talk about the alternate sculpts of these little creatures, which is really quite cool. The Brute, alternate sculpt, so more alternate sculpts there. Which again, it doesn't change the gameplay, and we can't really make much predictions. But someone who's mentioned a lot is this Father Birdo. I think he might have quite a lot to say in the campaign, in the story. Again, it's just a guess, but as he's being talked about in a few of the updates linked to some of the NPCs, that might be the one. I believe him to be, well, he could be anything. He could be Norse turned to, he looks a bit like a Christian monk in a way, that maybe had thought about, and he's got a lot of tattoos, like crosses on his body. So, yeah, who knows what and how he comes into play. But I think he'll have a lot to say in that story. Maybe he was King Haakon's advisor, a little bit like Lothbrok. What's he called? Oh God! No, Vikings, the TV show. Lothbrok. Oh my word! It's gone out of my head. Anyway, the main character from that, obviously the Christian monk. He befriends him, and he becomes his advisor. And my guess is that Father Birdo is King Haakon's advisor, and then he's coming back out of from this when you come to the island, and perhaps that's how he's coming in. So that'd be interesting. Fist on, snow rising. He walked about, hang in his hand, his eyes. It talks about man has taken him, not one of the king, but one of his cross. So yeah, that'd be interesting. But it does say here, you got it, instead of a cardboard token, this important non-player character will be represented by a miniature. So I reckon he's going to be a big part of the story. King Birdo. Moving on. So if you've seen the camp board, when you go to the scenario 2 in Tabletop Simulator, you'll see that one of the hexes has this totem, this prayer site, and it all stems from this. So when you first arrive to the island, you see the prow of King Haakon's ship, which is here, and you find out that it's actually his prow. It's not a dragon, and that's where you're trying to aim for in the first scenario. And in the second scenario, it's the camp, and then you effectively have that as the worship site. So that's being replaced by about a 10 centimetre tall miniature, which is going to be really nice. With real scale, here we go. So there's Father Birdo, and you can see the totem is about twice the size of Father Birdo, and this is a sculpt that's been painted, by the way. So that what makes me think, yeah, that's a really important character. Not to give away, and that's the hex that you would see in Tabletop Simulator. Okay, so another building, another important one. Moving on. So talking about the forge. Now, Frody, being the blacksmith, could be quite pivotal to this particular one. I'll talk about upgrades in a bit, but certainly when we're thinking about items and so forth and upgrades, that's definitely going to be part of this game. They've already mentioned about stickers that we'll talk about in one of the updates, that we'll talk about how that's changing as well. But Forge is going to be there as well. Obviously, That's going to enable things to be upgraded, to maybe build things, mend things, whatever it might be with that. And possibly it may be a prerequisite to build other buildings. Who knows? But certainly Frodi's all over this, so I think, yeah, he's going to be one of the characters, one of your playable characters that's going to be really important. And again, this is another part from these updates. There's another part which really excites me about the game, is it's not just these characters going on skirmish missions to meet scenarios and objectives. I think, and I really hope, that they're going to be pivotal in the kind of the society, your clan, your society, how they interact, what they kind of do. For example, and this is complete guesswork now, but you might have to do kind of like a camp phase in a way, as one of the scenarios on your board, and then you decide on some characters that will be doing it. So Frody might have to work in the forge. Someone else might be someone has to go out hunting or whatever it might be, and that will determine what characters you can take forward to certain scenarios. So it may be different every time you play, depending on what things you're upgrading in the camp, in your kind of like homestead, and how you're doing different things. That may not be the case at all. It might be very much set in stone the kind of characters that you have to take for each one, in a way. But yeah, that was just an idea. The dashboard improvement. Now, this is what I really wanted to work on. So you'll notice the dashboard's the same as in the Tabletop Simulator mod. However, they have clearly got... they wanted to make a recess to put the wound tokens in, but also, instead of putting stickers over your boards, I'm pretty hopeful you're going to be putting kind of little inlays, little abilities. So you're going to upgrade your abilities, you're going to change them and make them personable. Also, a real clear identification of this is the standing in society, their rank in society. That has been kind of hollowed out to be changed. So your community, your people, will change as the game goes on. That is definitely going to be true. In terms of the scenarios that you play on Tabletop Simulator, you know that Alvar's injured, but you find out clues that it could be an inside job. It might be that, you know, there's some sort of traitorous activity going on, or something a bit more suspicious, certainly. So this is awesome. I love this. I love the fact that it's going to change, and I hope it's going to make everyone's experience of hell different. And that will also, of course, lend itself to replayability, which is a big part of these games. They're so big, but they're so narratively driven that it's quite important to me that I can play with different game groups and not just do the same thing over and over again. Because I'll be playing through those. Now, obviously, I don't mind certain parts of it obviously being the same. Of course, that's going to happen. It's a narrative, right? But if certain bits can change, so different routes, different upgrades, personalising the characters differently, having them act differently and be revered in different ways inside society, that'll make it really interesting for replayability or playing with different game groups. So I definitely want to play this solo. I think it's going to lend itself really well for a solo mode. And it sounds like they're really trying to push for a decent solo mode, which is fantastic. But I want to do it solo, but I definitely want to play with my board game group. So we've got 4 of us for that, and that's another side of it. And this kind of upgrading idea is really, really bonus for that. Another alternative pose. This is so cool. The miniatures and the art and everything in this game are just amazing. Skinner, there he is, a bit more. Okay, let's keep going. And then the Art of Hell. So this is this is the first add-on, which was kind of like the art book, 130 pages of it, mind. There'll be a lot more spoilers in that, I imagine. But about how they came up with the sculpts, the lore, and everything else. That might be amazing. That could be an amazing add-on for sure. With a nice sleeve and everything else. The art, I love the art. The simplistic art of this game is so good. Look at that, with the runes going down the binding. Anyway, so that's the art book, but a little bit more than the art book, it seems. 130 pages worth. So now we've got the next one, okay, which is the Refuge. So again, this may not be in your camp. Maybe. I don't know. Or it could just be a homestead that you can put people who, let's say, are injured or you need to get healed up, and they might use the refuge to put them in there. In fact, it tells you here, they will be able to heal themselves more easily. And then doing the healer skill, I think that's what I say, inside the refuge. Now it does say here, although I don't think it says this on the healer skill on the boards, that you add 1 dice to the healing tests and ignore blank sides. I thought the healer skill was literally just ignore wounds on the blank side. So that'd be really cool. So that tells me that wounds will be persistent in the final game. So I know that if you go to Tabletop Simulator, it'll say they've all started with 1 wound. And the idea behind that is they've literally just gone for this massive journey across the seas in rough terrain, kind of been separated. They don't know where their clan is. They've not been met. So kind of morale's a little bit down. They're exhausted. The Jarl's been poisoned, as it seemed. Certainly has been badly injured. So all of these things tie into them all starting with 1 wound. But having things like this refuge means that I think these wounds will be persistent, and you'll have to think about that when you take away for the next scenarios or whatever they might be. So there's another building to go on the camp scenario. It's one would presume. And then we've got, oh, this is so cool. And then we've got the next NPC, the Fury. What a miniature. But not only that, look, I mean, all these miniatures that are painted by Seb Levine, just absolutely crazy. But they did a panoramic, a little scenario, oops, a little scenario scene there. And look at that, just amazing. But you can kind of see the idea, you can get the idea in your minds as you read the story and the kind of narration as you go through that. So that's Fury. Her noble clothes, although worn out by time and dirt, are sufficient proof. As hard an act to calm as a horse scared of thunder, she spits her fear in our faces. The repeated horrors that she has had to endure since the camp was decimated have had the better of her in every way. This can be read in her eyes that no longer blink, frozen in the staggering spectacle of atrocious memories. It seems impossible that she would deign to remember all that she has experienced on the island. Has she only cut her tongue out, so as never to reveal the mysteries that this treacherous mist conceals. So it gives you an idea that the camp was decimated. And when you know that from the second scenario in the Tabletop Simulator, it talks about that you see this camp and it's been abandoned, it's been decimated. So what's happened here? And this gives the clue that this Fury, this character, was part of King Hakon's tribe again. So a lot of these NPCs, I think, were from a year ago the original inhabitants of this island. But what has happened to them since then, we don't know. But obviously some pretty horrendous, treacherous stuff. Again, that idea of treachery. So what has actually happened here? Really quite cool to think about. But what a miniature. Love that. As for so many of the miniatures in this game. And again, why I'm so excited about this is for that. Another one, the middle one. So there's this kind of family where there's this, I think it's a brother and 2 sisters. The nickname given to him by the warriors of the village did not seem to suit his boiling Huskarl. He was sometimes seen alongside his younger brother, shouting all the glory in his prowess. His clumsy nerve was hardly convincing. 1 moon later, sitting in the tavern, he would have had deep conversations with his eldest sister, think about a convoy of tactics to plunder villages, improvising himself as a strategist. But it was the dead weight for his sister, so much smarter than him. So you got like 2 brothers and a sister as a trio, which are going to play a big part in probably one of the acts. And I think how the acts will go, and this again we don't know, but the first act will be a bit like the Tabletop Simulator scenarios, where you come to this island and you're settling yourself in, and you find out a few different bits or another. Now they could go about it different ways. In the second act, it can maybe go like 10 years later, or 5 years later, or a year later, whatever. It might skip some time, and then new stuff starts to happen, or it might just go straight on from one to the other, or it might follow different characters. See, these things we don't know. But that again is really exciting for me, is that we got 3 acts, and just thinking about those 3 acts is quite exciting, even though we don't really know what's happening. So Brand, the middle one. The second wolf cub of the litter occupied the centre, but did not find his place among the fellow cubs. He would go left then right without ever imposing his own vision or getting the recognition and respect from his own people that he was convinced he deserved. So again, quite a classic Viking sculpt, warrior sculpt there, perhaps with a bit more heavily armoured. So that was the next one. Horned ones, alternative sculpts again, just so cool. Look at this. It's like a gorilla. If you look at, he's got hands as feet. So there's these little ties in. What are these things? Are these in this island? Is it supernatural? You can see he's got hairy arms. So it does look very much like a gorilla type creature, but then quite human as well. So what's happened in this island? That's the horned one. I don't think that's a single. How one's a particular? 4 of them in the same pose are included. So now that you have the structural, they come in 2 different poses, which is quite cool. So you've got 2 different poses again. The clan of the Peregrines. So the Peregrines are your player characters. So the ones that you've got in Tabletop Simulator, and this goes through those characters in more detail. Obviously, if you go to Tabletop Simulator and you flip their character board, you'll see all of this lore and all the information about those different characters there. So I'm just going to skip through that. Right, this was cool. Going through the updates, this was a really cool one. They've got a cell. The skill and ingenuity of our people have made it possible to turn a gaping hole dug by our predecessors into some sort of cage. We built this jail by order of our Jarl, but everyone wonders who would end up rotting in it. The need to build a prison came after we captured our first native, one of those puny vermin. However, we dare not rule out the possibility that the next occupant might belong to the clan, especially now the doubt is settled in the hearts of the powerful. From the moment we set foot on this accursed island, reality itself seemed to be distorted a little more each day. So, as I mentioned, from the Tabletop Simulator scenarios, there does seem to be a bit of treachery in play. Try not to spoil it too much if you haven't played it, but effectively in the camp scenario, things take place that make you question about why Alvar is injured. But this is really cool. We put the puny vermin, so the lesser creatures that you fight straight away. You might capture them, put them in here, and kind of interrogate them almost. So you might be using skills tests to do those, to find out different things, which help you, give you maybe boons for scenarios, maybe choose different quests or scenarios. That could be really cool. So there's a prison or a cell that you can kit. Very cool. But also this idea of your own, members of your clan. Are you going to be putting those in prison? And what does that change the story for? All of these ideas, and just by seeing these little snippets in the updates, really gets me excited about this game, because it's got so much scope that it could be, and it's the guessing and kind of I wonder if it's this, wonder if it's this, before we get the game, and then when you play it, it's going to be awesome to see what actually is happening, and how the story actually unfolds. And I really hope that Mythic Games do not spoil anything for us. They've already said the 2 scenarios, so we can play it on Tabletop Simulator. They are going to be different in the final game, which I really like the idea of. Probably basing on the same ideas of the arriving on the island, Alvar injured. I don't think that's going to change, but hopefully a few different bits will. But that's going to be so cool. And again, it talks about decisions. So as a group of players, you will be making decisions. So obviously there's been talk about the semi-co-op nature of some bits, which we still don't know much details on, but that's going to play into it as well. So who are we going to put in the prison? Who do we think is the traitor at different points in the story, whatever it might be? Then you've got your familiars. So each character either comes with a familiar or a special ability. And what's really nice is they're little tokens in Tabletop Simulator, but they're going to come with their own miniatures. So they've all their familiars are on the base with them, on their character. But when you send them out to different hexes, you can send out the little character as a miniature. I appreciate that. I like that. It's completely not necessary in terms of gameplay. It makes absolutely no difference. But it says here that this is my only concern. For me, I love it. But it says which replaces the initial cardboard token. I hope they leave the cardboard tokens in for those who don't wish to paint loads and loads of miniatures, and they quite like the idea of a coloured token to represent those familiars. Obviously, the main characters and NPCs and all the enemies are really good to have all miniatures. I think that works really well. But I don't know. For me, it's not a disadvantage, but I think for some people it may. So yeah, Rolf's really cool. He's really good actually because you search, reveal, and attack the hostile. So, but he's not got massive stats, so it's doesn't always become successful. So that was the first familiar that was happening. Then we had some more add-ons, which include some more textured dice, so 12 more textured dice, which are going to be nice. The faux leather dice tray. If you haven't got a dice tray, they're really useful, so all your dice don't go flying off the table. And then $1 million was met, and then the beast. So they tied this into one of the characters. Who was it? Ozlag. So Ozlag, they tied this beast into her. So these characters are very much linked together, which is, again, another really exciting part, is that perhaps our characters will have their own kind of submissions. That's what I may be taking from this, which would be really quite cool. 2 maps, a new unlocked stretch goal and a reworked miniature. So Ozlag was reworked. Magnar, in order to win the heart of the girl he loves, slayed the beast that the Northmani called Plagu, the most ferocious and gigantic wolf in all the lands of the north. Desiring a son, deep resentment overcame Magnar's heart when his beloved delivered him a daughter. He then led a solitary life, cut off from the clan, preferring to collect war or hunting trophies than to stay close to his family. His battle brothers gave chilling accounts of his battles, one of which often echoed through the streets of the village. On a clear night, Magnar followed the trail of the pack of wolves whose skulls and fangs he coveted. Clouds of breath bellowing, lungs caught in the frost, he walked with heavy step between the trees. Upon his arrival in a foggy clearing, the pack, surprised and flushed out, turned to face the hunter. So, kind of like a werewolf, right? Surprised himself by the number of his prey, Magnar distilled in blink and uttered a powerful howl to release his rage. Despite his wariness, his blows sliced through the air, enabling him to avoid being surrounded. It was often after several hours of fierce fighting that Magnar managed to gain the upper hand. The wolves, disorientated, barked in fear at his every move. During this ferocious dance, he lost all humanity and adopted the traits and attitudes of his enemies. He became a distorted reflection of himself, blowing line between man and wolf. So, as you guessed, we are replacing the beast cardboard token with this beautiful miniature. So, very much a werewolf, wolf man, and the story behind it. And that's what I love. This is a narrative game. We definitely know that. We look at the Tabletop Simulator mods, and the narrative, the story is strongly embedded in the gameplay and in the game. And I love that. So it looks like they're really thinking about all of the characters, giving them a lot of lore, giving them a lot of story, and how they link it to it. Now, is this not necessarily Ozlog linked to this beast, actually? Sorry. It was just on the same update. And they just changed the sculpt. But that's very cool. So we're going to have these different scenarios, hopefully, these different stories on these NPCs, on these different folklore, to try and find out what happened. And that's going to lead to a lot of different scenarios, which is really exciting. Asta the Saint. So this is another NPC, a disturbing miniature, as they call it. Darkness reigns, envelopes, icy as the air that tears at your lungs apart. In the distance, a glow reveals itself and catches your eye. You frown, and finally you distinguish a diffuse light, which creates moving and threatening shadows on the immense black trees that surround it. You come closer, worried. Suddenly you see a human head floating in the air. No, gods be praised, it doesn't float. It's the pale face of a woman with empty, bloody eye sockets. Wearing a long white skirt, she wanders like a ghost, dazed, embracing a human skulls. The eye sees but rarely perceives. The beast is always searching. The saint wonders, haggling. The other eyes guide the blind man of Bethsaida here. All of us down here are looking for answers, but you have to see things differently to finally understand. So, yeah, quite a disturbing miniature. Blood on the hands, a skull around the neck with bones, dressed in just like a skirt with candles and a wreath on her head. Was this some kind of sacrifice gone wrong? Is this something to do with the belief? Is something possessing the past inhabitants of your camp? Who knows? But what? So they link in Fury to this as well. Oh right, no, they missed one of the characters, one of the people who Oliver Thrill about the sculpt. But yeah, the Saint. So I mean, it's pretty harrowing, and this game is pretty dark. It's quite mature, and they've already said that. In fact, I think it says 18+ on the box. So it's not one for the faint-hearted. But yeah, literally every single one of these NPCs makes me go, wow, this is going to be a completely different story. And it did say here as well about the beast. Now, I don't know if they're talking about the beast from the last update, or where is it? Threat shadows. The beast is always searching. So maybe this character, the Saint, is linked to the beast. Maybe it was his beloved, who bore a daughter rather than a son. Who knows? So I'm sure lots of these stories will intertwine and they'll link together. But yeah, it's gonna be awesome to see these different scenarios as they play differently. Right, moving on. You've got the neoprene mat, and going by the neoprene mats from Mythic Games, they should be high quality stitched and everything. It's pretty big, 90 by 70 centimeters. So we're talking about a big mat here. If you imagine these are the tiles, here's the camp that never changes, and then you've got on the expedition side it's blank, so for you to lay the tiles out. You've got the kind of clan board stuff here and here, so you can see you've got the enemies, the round tracker, resources, cards for the event, the fate deck, and things like that. And then you've got your prayers, and your beliefs going over here. Will be really nice. Not essential, again, you've got the cardboard, so that's fine. Okay, so neoprene mat, which is classic with all Kickstarters pretty much. Then we got another familiar, the cat. I love this one. I absolutely love this one. The Madman's familiar. So that's an additional familiar unlocked. The Huntress. So this is another one of the threats in the game, and that's coming in a different sculpt, which gives alternate sculpt to these creatures. So it's 6 Huntresses with 2 different poses, basically. So another creature. So then it talks about the combat, how combat works. What to look at in terms of how they go, what they target, their priorities, and how you do your abilities and things like that. And it links to the rulebook, so you can work out the mechanics of the game. But the mechanics are pretty simple, to be honest, and which I love. It's the stories, which is the most important thing. The Watchtower. Now, there's a really cool thing in here. It talks about where does it say here? So this is the size difference in terms of the different miniatures. Hopefully you'll be able to fit this miniature and 6 others inside the same tile, but we'll have to wait. Placed by Billamy, which is probably one of the most ambitious, difficult to build for the heroes. Its height will almost rival the Tower of Worship. It's a dual purpose. It allows the leader to isolate himself, but also provides a dominant position which that allows for not only monitoring the camp, but also see surrounding areas and anticipate dangers. Represented in the game by allowing a hero to consult the next fate card in advance. The hero on top of the watchtower also benefits from a bonus to their range attack by increasing their range by 1. So hopefully this roof will be able to be removed, and you'll be able to put your miniatures on top of it. And the idea of that is, and this obviously that last paragraph that I just read, it tells you that you're going to have camp scenarios where you're going to get attacked, and we're going to see some more upgrades which are going to basically provide evidence that's going to be the case. So almost like a tower defense. So suddenly you've gone from kind of like expeditions, finding out about these scenarios, finding about these NPC stories, going off on to these underground cave systems. You go into different villages or structures, whatever it might be. You might be speaking to like these different NPCs, these different monsters. It may not all be about attacking. We don't know that yet. It might be about doing tests that aren't about attacking. And this goes to talk about the fact that we are going to get the camp scenarios when we've built our camp, and things are going to happen to that. Now, if you play the second scenario of the Tabletop Simulator, you'll know about the fact that it's not just about there are waves of baddies and you attack them. There are what I hope they do this for all of the scenarios is it furthers the story and gives you more ideas about what's happening in the world and what happened to King Haakons a year ago. And the idea of how they set up that second scenario on Tabletop Simulator, I absolutely loved it. That is my favourite scenario out of the two, and I think it's just got so much in it. It's got the idea that, I mean, you've got 8 characters first of all, so you've got a lot of actions, I suppose you could say, and a lot of things are happening. There's lots of things on the board. You're trying to find out new things about this camp. You're trying to almost set up a new base of operations, and this is really, really positive. Having these buildings not just as eye candy, but also as effectively, having abilities and boons in the actual scenarios themselves. So the Watchtower looks really cool, and as it said, someone can go into the Watchtower, or they might go on top of it for that extra range. Next is Inga the Owl for Ingwild. Another. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Another familiar miniature, upgrading from the token, hopefully not replacing. But again, I don't mind. I wonder. Then they're going to talk about some more of the characters, the programs. Again, I'm not going to go through that. Quest for Fire. Right. So this is showing the kind of the adult content of the game. Okay. So a completely naked miniature will be, and the art and everything else. But they have said in here there is a reason behind. There's a reason why it's done it. It's important because it's story related. Okay, when you play the game, and we are talking about Norse, survival horror. So again, it doesn't bother me, but it may bother other people. A fantastic sculpt though, absolutely fantastic sculpt. Again, as per always. Let me read the fluff about this though, because this is another NPC. I am found and questioned. I will feign ignorance. I'll explain to them that I've forgotten. Yeah, I remember everything. Yes, I remember those inhuman beings who took me from mine, the stinking blindfold they placed over my eyes. I remember the pungent smells, the icy stone walls of their lair. Their hooked fingers which drew strange patterns on my naked skin, burned by the cold. I remember the constant sound of drops falling here and there, the crying and screaming that echoed in the infernal darkness. Then they took me, somewhere in the shadows, to the fate they had in store for me. As I walked, still blinded, I felt the singular and unhoped for warmth of a torch passing close by my skin. A gift from heaven. All this time spent in the dirt and cold had made me forget the soft and comforting heat that a flame can give off. No time to think. I grasp the source of the hope with wild strength. I don't know by what miracle I managed to keep my captors at bay, but thanks to the torch and the drafts coming from outside, I managed to find my way out of the cursed cellar. I ran breathlessly for long minutes, and it was when I stopped that I finally understood it had all been planned. The torch, my all too easy escape. I was the prey they would pursue for the sacrificial hunt in their heart of the forest. I am still running now, and there is no one to come to my aid against these beings from the bowels of this diabolical land. I am cold and I am terrified, but I owe my survival now, as in the past, only to myself, and to myself alone. So, called the Virgin. So, was she kidnapped? What is she? Is it a sacrificial thing? Is it sport? What, and they talk about it talks about in here the idea that she was it from I remember the punch smells. I suppose the lair. So are we talking about the monsters? Are we talking about the clan before? Was she a native of this island and then she was basically taken, if you like, by King Haakon and his group, and then they kept her? We still don't know how it's going to be, but it's going to be an NPC. Is she gone past sanity? Will you be able to reason with her? Will you be able to help her? Or do you have to go against her? Really going to be cool. We don't know. But it's really, really cool that we've got this awesome mini. And yet again, another story arc that's going to be put into this what seems like a huge story. Huge, intertwining, complex story. And that is what excites me the most about this game. Is, I've got Kingdom Death Monster. And for me, the story's not the most important thing in that. It's got a great kind of you build your settlement up, you upgrade things, you buy different weapons and items, you put them on your clan members, but then you go and fight on an arena board, and then it's just the same thing. It's different enemies, and it's got a fantastic AI deck mechanic in there. It makes you feel really cool when you're attacking and everything, but it's the same each time, and I feel like a lot of games are like that are coming out, and that's what Hell seems a little bit different. Things like Oathsworn, which I know is very, very popular. Some great mechanics again, but very similar to Kingdom Death Monster in the sense that you seem to be battling on the same board every time. Story's going to happen in the kind of town phase, as you go explore the town and you unveil different things that are going on. But this is more like literally a storybook, choose your own adventure storybook, but in a really, really engrossing way. And that's probably the most important thing. It's talking about Bergen. So there's Bergen's bear cub, familiar, awesome. So there's another familiar miniature that was unlocked. Moving on. So this is quite cool. So this is Hanfatal, or something like that, which is Viking chess. So it's not normal chess. They use the Vikings version that they played in the day with all these wooden pieces. It's pretty cool. Or plastic, they could be actually. So that comes along, and you can double this up as having them as the activation tokens for your characters, which is quite cool. And it comes all in a nice compact box with a magnetic lock, I think, and a mat. So that's it's a bit different, a game inside a game, which is quite cool. It's a bit like Gwent for The Witcher. Right, here we go. So, trunks and stones. So this is fortifications. So this tells you that, yes, you are going to have camp scenarios and you are going to be attacked and you are going to need to defend your camp. That is 100% going to happen. So you've got a little bit of an idea here in this picture where you fit these up and then you've got your buildings. It's going to look awesome. I mean, that camp, when you set up all the miniatures and everything, it's going to be so good. It's got here the save sheets. So this is so you can lay out what your buildings are, where they are, what fortifications you might have, and where they might be. So you just literally colour in the borders, because ultimately you're going to be going between camp and expedition phases and scenarios. So you want to be able to know how to set up your camp each time, and it's going to change. It's definitely going to change as you go on. So that was a cool little upgrade. Right, the elder sister. Remember, we've had the two brothers. Now we talk about the elder sister, the most cleverest of them. What a miniature. Look at that. Oh, so good, so good. A litter always has a stronger cub. A pack will always have an alpha. Sometimes it will be an incredible strength that commands leadership, and other times it will be a shrewd and tactical mind that demands it. Bodil, who's this elder sister, possesses both in equal measure, and so learn not just survive, but thrive among a clan, while also supporting her two younger brothers. Even as they themselves grew strong and powerful as time passed, Brandon Bjarni never ceased to be in awe of their elder sister, always bowing to the overwhelming charisma of their would-be foster mother. It was this deadly combination of determination and desire to become great that allowed Bodil to rise to the top of the hierarchy of the Raven clan. So it's now kind of telling us that these siblings are part of the Raven clan. Now, who are the Raven clan? Again, like Father Brond, the really important character they talked about before, the Raven clan obviously are going to have a big say in one of these acts. Some say that her ruthlessness and obsessive quest for wealth had its origin in a childhood spent in poverty and destitution, struggling to feed 3 hungry mouths in a harsh world, and this is the reason why she is said to have travelled to Byzantium. Tales tell of how she deceived many lords, stripping them of their wealth and honour before returning with chests full of chiselled weapons, brightly coloured gems, and expertly embroidered fabrics. Everyone understood that no one else from the journey could have reaped rewards as fast as she did. So, before she came to this island, some would presume, she was really revered as the Raven clan kind of leader, and got lots of wealth for those. Bodil is always 3 moves ahead. Hakan learned this at his expense the day he had no choice but to beg for help from her and her brothers. Bodil agreed, but secretly saw Hakan's request as weakness, making him as her next prey. And when the Raven clan circles over its prey, it follows it everywhere, wherever it goes. So, how did she get to this island? That's a big question, right? So if, what you would imagine by what they've said in her quest for wealth, she kind of tricked these very powerful men, and then effectively grabbed everything from them. Did she do the same with Hakan on this island? Was she certainly befriending Hakan to get to this island and then trying to make Raven Clan the clan? So, all those stories, all that story will be told through gameplay. Again, really exciting. Again, as it says here, and they, as I said, they put a lot of hints in. The elder sister will have a very important role to play. Okay, so again, like Father Burden, is it Burden? I think and this is just my opinion, I don't know for a fact. It sounds like they're identifying some of the main characters for each of the acts. So maybe have Father Burden, I hope it's Burden, who's effectively maybe King Hakon's main advisor, and there's a whole story behind that. Then you've got the Raven Clan. That's going to be really prevalent. That's going to be a big story, I think. Are they all going to be in all 3 acts, or is each act going to be a different kind of story? We don't know. Okay, so that's Bodil. Otter the Eagle. Oh my god, Erica is ridiculous as a character. She is. I will be playing through the scenario 2 in the camp scenario live on Tabletop Simulator, and she's a guaranteed choice to take. Obviously, you don't take her in the first scenario; you're not allowed. She's so good. She's Christian by nature, and remember, she is Alvar's daughter. So we've got this idea that is King Hakon, obviously, and you've got the Queen who came along. I presume they are kind of embraced other religions, like a lot of things that we know of. But that's really cool. And there's the miniature resting on an arm of a prey, which is quite cool. Awesome. So that was another unlock. Wolf pelt. So these are actually enemies. These kind of possessed wolf pelts. So we definitely got supernatural going on. We know that we had like we don't know what these threats are, what they're doing on the island, and what they mean to us. Even after the first two scenarios, there is some supernatural things going on in scenario 2, which you'll see in the live stream. But this is pretty cool. The thrill of the hunt remains for some tastier than the sweetest mead. When we arrived here, we thought Ul's blessing was at work in this strange land, seemingly filled with prey abound. But was it really our benefactor god, or some malevolent hunting spirit of a different kind? I still long for when we didn't know the truth, when we first heard the howling of wolves, barely stifled by the whistle of the wind through the trees. The witch told us that the signs had a different, more terrifying meaning than we could have imagined. When one prays to Ul in the hope of receiving his blessing, it is unthinkable that he would respond with the cry of a predator. We are the prey to an entity that roams the winds. And on the day the wolves howled, I could have sworn that I saw an icy blue glow in the blizzard snow's curtains. Awesome. Now it says from the hunt set, so if you go to the Kickstarter page, and I will show the Kickstarter page later. It does talk about, and you can go to, well, I don't know if you can now because they changed the website, but you could go to see some spoilers of some of the miniatures. But the hunt was one big part of it. So one of these acts I think will be linked to the hunt, where you'll meet some NPCs, you'll be running through the story in different ways, and this is what this has been put down to, this idea of this hunt with the wolves and everything else. Quarry. So your quarry tokens are being replaced by miniatures again. This had a bit of a divisive in terms of comments and opinions. Should it have been a deer that was just waiting and just grazing before it was shot? In this case, they've decided to do it as it's being quarried. It's basically being hunted, and it's being killed. So it's on its motion of being killed. So that's, each their own. That was very much a difference of opinion from many people. Oh, this is very cool, and I will be using this. So setup and solo. So it talks about how to set up a song, and certainly a scenario, where to put the tiles, what these different things mean. If it's the camp, how that works. But the solo mode, they talk about the solo mode here. And they talk about the fact they want a dedicated solo mode. And they've said we cannot imagine it without one. Just because it's so narratively driven, that's really important. But they said there's some problems with that. Number one, so many heroes. So in Camp Scenario 2, in Tabletop Simulator, you take 8 characters. But what I love about this, and this update, which I will be using, it talks about here, on the right, it talks about the solo setup. Now the passages, if you have a look, are the same, if I remember rightly. Oh no, they're slightly different. They are slightly different. Okay, so there are some slight tweaks. So I'll be using this one, and I'll keep this. I'll keep this up on my iPad so I can see it. But also the setup's different as well. So if you look over on the right here, you're actually going to play with 4 playable heroes. And one of the first things they said is for the solo mode, for each setup, you'll have it slightly different for solo. So they'll show you a solo setup. You will still use the same ideas. It will still follow the same story, of course, which is really important. But some things are slightly different. So you halve the number of playable heroes. But as I showed up here, each hero gains 1 extra action per turn and can perform 2 movement actions per turn per activation, which is really, really quite key. Makes it so it's a bit more balanced. You start with different amounts of resources, and the threats are different as well. So I really like that they are really thinking about solo in this. Solo is so prevalent in the board game community now, especially at the moment with the situation we find ourselves in. And but even after that will happen, solo will be massive. Myself included. There will be people who can't go board gaming every night or 3 times a week or whatever it might be. They might only be able to do it once a week if they're lucky. Family commitments, job commitments, whatever they might be. But usually people have some time in their own homes to basically watch films, play computer games, and what I've started doing a lot more is playing board games solo. So you get the same kind of experience. Now this is great because this is a fully narrative story game. So I can definitely see myself doing this solo. So I like that they're doing a really dedicated solo mode. And then if you look here as an example, if you have to make decisions, what they're saying here is we will do it so, yeah, you still make decisions, but it depends on what characters you have in that scenario. So, for example, each Norse hero votes for option A, each wild or Christian hero goes for option B. Whereas in the multiplayer, normal way of playing it, you all vote. And the rank higher than 9 gets 2 votes, the rank from 6 to 9 gets 1 vote, lower than 6 gets no votes, and Frody gets an extra vote. So it's really cool that they put that as a very narrative part linked to the story, but they're also thinking about that for solo, which is really cool. And again, another reason why I'm really excited about this game is a proper designated solo mode. If you've looked at my other videos of my of this YouTube channel, you'll notice I've gone through a lot of solo modes that have been fan made. They've been community made. They've not been made by the game board company. Okay, which means it's a lot of work, number one, and it requires a lot of play testing because they're getting a game. They're not the game designer. These fans, and you try and make it, but they're fantastic, and they get you to get your big games that you spend a lot of money on to the table more frequently. So something like Batman Gotham City Chronicles, it was getting a bit of playtime when we could meet up in board game communities, but then it doesn't in a lot of people's lives, and a lot of people sell their Batman Gotham City Chronicles, and it's a fantastic game. But the solo mode that someone made up, JK777 I think it was, is absolutely fantastic. It works really well, and it means you can play Batman yourself on your own, and all those stories and scenarios. Really, really cool. So I really like that they are doing that in the box, so you don't have to wait for a solo mode. You can just crack on straight with it. Right, Pan's Labyrinth. A lot of people talked about this. I mean, I love it. I love the miniature, but it is very much like Pan's Labyrinth. I do agree. But very cool. The Beholder. He was a pilgrim, a wanderer who travelled for miles on foot across many plains, dunes and fields. He lived simply, eating little but feeding his soul deeply with pictures and drawings. Sometimes he would stop at the top of a hill to freeze on parchment, the moment which, before his eyes, stretched infinitely. It was a crisp, clear morning when the pilgrim arrived in a modest farming village. He passed a dozen faces he felt he had seen 100 times before, until he came upon the hungry beggar. Blind, the man could not provide for himself, and so he handed him a few coins. As the coins fell into a tin cup, he truly looked upon the man. He was old, and in his chiselled face, his white eyes took on 1,000 shades. "Could I draw you, old man? Your features are fair despite your misfortune." "What is drawing?" asked the old man curiously. "To many, it is but a scribble on a page. To me, it is using your eyes to capture the world. Sounds a wonderful gift for those fortunate enough to have seen colours and shapes all their lives. I have no regrets except that I will never experience such a thing." On hearing those words, the tale says the pilgrim offered his eyes to the melancholy old man without a moment of hesitation. "This is a gift more precious than coins. Now take advantage of the days you have left to capture the world with an artist's eyes." In the arid plains surrounding the village, some people claim that an old man is still travelling, holding his eyes in one hand and filling countless sketchbooks with drawings in the other. Legend of Sinai found the rubble of Astor's tent. Oh man, if things like that don't excite you, then perhaps this isn't the game for you. But these little snippets are so cool, so cool. And this is the alternate sculpt, by the way. So these Seekers, to be honest, the Beholder, there are multiple of them. We know that because there's going to be 4 in the box, as it says, and they're very much in with nature. So I mean, this is just a story, a legend, as it were. But I love that some of these creatures take on these legends. It's very cool. Okay, so that was another stretch goal, was alternative sculpts. Another familiar, which is Cert, which is the dog of Yorick, which is awesome. A St. Bernard, pretty much. Fluffy St. Bernard. He's a really good character, by the way, Yorick. I probably will be playing him in the scenario 2. And he doesn't get engaged in combat, which is really cool. So he can literally just walk and walk and walk. And the dog's got phenomenal perception. And read this for Cert. I think he could be probably the second best familiar, maybe the third. I think obviously Erica's eagle is really, really in tune with Erica and really helps with that. The owl is fantastic for literally just stopping threats. That gives you loads of time. Can't underestimate that. But Cert searched in the area and an adjacent area to reveal threats in the order of your choice with 4 perception for 1 food. Okay, only an agility of 2, so you can only be 2 away from Yorick, but still, really strong character. And he's like the kid. This is amazing. This update is literally just a painting tutorial. This is Seb Levine. I mean, it's a fair amount of work to get all that way, but he lists all the colours he used, all the stages, which is really fantastic. So if you have the time, that might be worth looking through, not just for Hell, just to try with different miniatures. Okay. So carrying on. Different languages, fantastic. I think the more accessible you can make it to people. English and French, which they've done pretty much for all their games, but adding German, Spanish and Italian. Wow, what about, and they've said it's a narrative game, so this was a must. I really appreciate that. I'm English, so I would get the normal one anyway, but to have it fully in German, Spanish and Italian, I think it's fantastic. And they put in a few different examples as we go down. So if you are not English native, you can still get whatever language you want, to be honest. The Wild Hunt. So again, we talked about the fact that the Wild Hunt sounds like it's one of the acts. This is the Huntress. So good. Everything changed after the first hunting party returned from the heart of the woods. We thought the only inhabitants of this lands were naught but disorganised savages, easy to keep at a distance. But this new world seems determined, proven us wrong at every turn. Such is the horror of this land. Many ask why we should pray to our new gods now, for even they seem to have turned their eyes away from this place. The stunted forms of monstrous women chased us from the dark forest yesterday, ambushing us as soon as we ventured far enough away from the camp. Even the most stealthy among us were spotted in an instant. They preyed upon the injured, seemingly sniffing them out from only a few drops of blood. Once they had your scent, they were unrelenting, leaping upon us, tearing at our flesh. Worse was when they came riding bareback on their repulsive mounts. Their bones seemed to come apart at will, and I swear that seeing one of these creatures jump from a tree to tree, dislocating on all sides, is one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. The hunt is on, and it remains to be seen how long before they come to slit our throats on our beds. So, again, we can get some points from this text. Number one, it seems like the hunt is you guys getting hunted. Now, whether this is kind of like, maybe this is Act 2. So maybe Act 1, you build your camp, you find some NPCs, you get some more information about King Haakon and what happened here, who these inhabitants are. Maybe in Act 2, then there's the hunt, and they are chasing you. You're running around the island, you'll get split up, you might have different people getting lost. These are kind of like the hunters, right? Sniff of blood and they're chasing you with dislocating body parts. So, mental. And they've got mounts. Oh, wow. So we haven't seen that. But that gives you a little bit of an inkling. But perhaps, like the boss is one of these things on a mount. That'd be nuts. So 6 huntresses, and then you've got 3 in a new pose again. Wow. So cool. And I do appreciate that Mythic, as always, the amount of updates they give us just means that we can do this. The ship is a token in the second scenario. And again, in the second scenario. And again, it's replaced by a miniature. Nor is the name of the ship. No one dared to speak as the whole crew prepared for the worst. The rolling black clouds gathered on the horizon, the growing rumble of thunder heralding the wrath of Thor himself. Despite the silence, the crew rushed to do something, anything to withstand the reproach of this approaching storm. But even as Frodi and Alvar lashed thick rope to the mast, hoping to keep it from being torn away from the ship, there could not help but swear in frustration. Hadn't the gods tested them enough? First the labyrinths of rocks rising from the waters, then the famine that had shaken what little reason they had left, and now the ultimate test, the mother of all storms. Powerful waves hammered against the Nor, a prelude to the storm itself. As the pounding intensified, panic swept through the younger members of the crew, yelling to any and all of that the watery depths were haunted. Voices cried out of the rings of a 1,000-year-old snake, its cold skin and yellow eyes moving through the water. Panic became terror, and despite its slow advance, no one was prepared when the storm struck. As lightning cracked down from the heavens, the fearful crew tried their best to keep the Nor afloat. As huge waves continued to crash down upon the deck of the ship, gigantic shadows of black water rolled under the hull, striking it violently, lurching the Nor from side to side. Some of the sailors, mad with horror, shouted, "Jormungand! Jormungand!" Everyone who was able raced across the deck, trying to get the ship back into position. Some crewed the oars, rowing with all their strength. Others grabbed at the bindings of the sails, the skin torn from their hands as they clung to the ropes as best they could. Still, the ship was tossed about by the raging sea, grasped in the first death blows of Ragnarok. Suddenly a great wave fell upon them. The darkness engulfed them. When the crew awoke, no one understood how the ship had survived such an ordeal. What the sailors did know was their proud Nor had stood firm in the hellhole. Some considered the storm a warning from the Midgard serpent. It was then agreed to rename the Nor Vailgvog, wood scales. And until the end of the journey on these dark seas, the ship defeated all perils. So that's what you ride to get to this island. Are you going to use the ship again? Maybe. We don't know. Again, that could be part of the story. But very cool. Okay, that was another upgrade miniature. As it reached $2 million. And it talked about the 13 soundtracks, the extra survivor miniatures, the NPCs, all the buildings, the upgraded 3D tokens, deluxe components to stay away from stickers, the familiar miniatures, alternative sculpts, and then, oh, I love this, the extra box to put all the extra stuff. And you got like the white and the black box. Oh, it looks. I think it shows it here. The black box and the white box together. Oh, look at that! Night and day. That will look so good on the shelf. Then they talked about the fact they're going to colour the tokens, so it's easy and you don't have to paint them. A really nice little thing to add to it as well. I think we're nearly towards the end. It talks about the rest of the characters for the starting survivors that you play. And it's not to say that the NPCs won't be people you will play. I wanted to show you the beginning. Then they leaked what they're hoping to do as a final stretch goal. This was the final, so it's kind of like the end of the campaign. And they talked about the What's Up Wednesdays, which of course a lot of us watch, which is now a newscast, of course. What was this again? They're just saying thank you to Teen and everyone. About Tabletop Simulator mod. And it was coming. I mean, it took a little while to get that, because this was June and we didn't get it till August, at the end of August. And then they did a 3D printout of the Leo miniature, which is synonymous with Mythic Games, Joan of Arc, for example, being carried away. So that was the last kind of miniature they talked about. I want to go to, I don't think it's very far. So, here we go. This is really cool. It's really cool that they got premium box trays that will fit in the box, but what I liked was, where did it show that? In a second. When it talks about this deluxe box. There we go. This is cool because it gives you a little bit of an inkling of what they're hoping the game board to look like, the actual the contents. So it's got it in here. So what we've got here is all the tokens, of course, the threat tokens, the resources. You've got the dice in small and large. I don't know why they're small and large, and the scout and the leaders. All of the character boards. And then you've got these boxes, and I already showed you on the campaign, I'll show you in a second, that these boxes are kind of like the legacy element. So you open up the box for the scenario, so they'll be in different acts and different scenarios, and then the contents of that will give you new stuff. What I believe will happen, as this is the white box, this will be the kind of cardboard components, and in the black box will be the miniatures. So you'll have the similar kind of thing, but in the black box. That's what I'm thinking. You've got the bags, the tiles, and everything else there. And the cards. So that's what that's showing. It looks like a nice premium storage, to be honest. But that's what that was. So that's all I wanted to go through in terms of the updates. Then it starts to talk about what's kind of happening and everything like that. And some of the cons. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in terms of the updates. Some really cool stuff that came about from that. Here's the thing about it being 18 plus. 90 minutes per scenario, 1 to 4 with the solo mode included, and the 5 different languages. Awesome. With an example of what we'll look at on the board. Notice here, you've got wood. So these trunks, which you can use in melee, but perhaps you can bring those back and you can dismantle them if you've got a forge and you get more resources. That could be something. So there's a few little things that come up in the actual Kickstarter page, which I wanted to work upon. Of course, you've got lots of stuff on here. You can see some of the miniatures that are mentioned in the updates and some extra ones as well. Leo's on the live shown this at the bottom there, this kind of boss in quite a lot of detail, all painted up, as well as some of the others as well. That bear that's got stuff coming out of his mouth. But yeah, some fantastic ideas that are coming into it so far. You can see here we've got kind of like upgrades, and they're going to change. I'll pretty much guarantee that. If you wait until I finish Scenario 2 on Tabletop Simulator, you'll see that it starts with Alvar, and 2 different routes that Alvar can take. Then you've got the Expedition and Camp Fate cards. Obviously, that's a big part. I love that, by the way. The Fate cards are great. It gives that random element to how each round's going to come out and how it's going to play. Fantastic. You can see here the tokens for the buildings, and obviously that's been changed now to buildings, to miniatures, sorry. And a stack of tiles, of course. In fact, how many tiles? Let's say 60 expedition tiles, so plenty to be reused. Okay. Amazing. I love the design, the art, the design of this game. Really, really interesting. We've got prior, so you can see that there's going to be different upgrades, as I mentioned before, which is going to be cool. Narrative all the way, talking about the bookmark, and that you read off from the bookmark, of course. Different heroes that you will not choose. It's scenario, as it says here, it's scenario based. This is cool. So here you go, Champ 1, which I presume will be Act 1. You open up that box and you get all of the cards for that particular scenario, unique to that. And then, because you're going to have to get new miniatures, in the black box, it seems, is where all the miniatures are going to be residing. Predators and Prey, about worship, about the kind of mechanics of the game. Look at this. This is very cool. Survival. So this shows how the buildings will work. They've called it Healer. I think this is called the Lodge. I can't forget what we called it. But exploit scarce resources to survive and keep the clan together. Hunt for food. Collect that precious wood that will be a source of heat and essential material for your constructions. So what I think will happen is you'll play scenarios, and you'll notice with Tabletop Simulator, it doesn't matter about the resources. They're not persistent, but I think in the real game they will be. So you will you'll be chopping down wood. Again, I'll do the playthrough of Scenario 2 and you'll get a bit of a better idea of what I'm talking about. But you're going to be picking up resources, okay? So you could be chopping down wood. You're going to be doing that a lot, so you can build different materials. You'll need the food for your workers to build it. So it shows here, 4 wood, 2 food, and you can build this hut, the Healer. Okay? And then that will be persistent. I hope that's how it works. But that's so cool. Obviously horror, it's very much a horror game. And then it goes through the game components a little bit more deeper. Here are the boxes that it already tells you they're going to do. So a bit like Gloomhaven, where the characters, you're going to have these boxes that have all the components. I don't think the miniatures are in that, so you're going to have different ones. The hero dashboards, of course. Then you've got small dice and big dice. I don't know why there are big dice and small dice. Not sure, but there are. The save notepad with all the characters and what they got. So this shows us that it is going to be persistent. So if they've got injuries, how does that come about? We still don't know. As if, let's say that they come unconscious, you lose morale, but you can heal them up in their next activation, and then they can carry on moving. Is there going to be a mechanic where if you get knocked out, so if you take your wounds up to your hit points, if you like, do you suffer a permanent injury? Does something happen? Is it a trauma? How does that work? So what is on these save notepads, we don't know. The cubes to denote a few things, so round tracker, objective tracker, activation tracker, things like that. Obviously the hostile cards, once you've searched and revealed the threat. You've got the fate cards, I love this, which will be different for each scenario, it seems. Brilliant. The hero cards, 260 fate cards, right? The hero cards, you're going to be able to upgrade them. That's pretty much a guarantee, I think, because there are not 90 heroes, of course. So that's going to be a lot of change and make it very unique. Awesome. Loads of item cards, again, they're going to come in the scenario boxes and be different for different ones. Some will be these kind of gold backgrounds, which I think are persistent, and they may kind of tie in together. Again, you will see that going on in the second scenario. Threat cards, of course, telling you the AI abilities of your threat. Prayer cards, plenty of those for the 3 different beliefs. Special action cards, like in, again, the second scenario, I will talk about these special action cards. Objective cards to track on how you're doing your different objectives. A story map, okay, very cool. So a story map where you're going to be looking, is this going to be very different and going to be changing? Who knows? And then there's going to be sticker sheets, which you might be sticking on there. And they've already identified that they're going to have recesses in the character boards. So I think this may possibly be turned to cardboard. A lot of these things. Not all of them, but a lot of them will. And these are the abilities. You can see here, these are character abilities. So you're going to change the character's abilities. Whether it'll be like the same ability, but just boosted, I don't know. The clan board, of course, where you track everything. If you've got the neoprene mat, all of this stuff is on there. Then all the tokens. So yes, it does look like... I really do hope they keep these survivor tokens, familiar tokens, just so that, people who don't want to paint it, they can just use the tokens. But it does say they're replaced. I don't know if that's true. All of the other tokens, of course, and scenario tokens they don't want to give away. The heroes, of course, and their miniatures. So, for example, you can click on these things. Now, I don't think it works at the moment because they changed... No, it doesn't. They changed their website to a kind of eShop website, and Hell is not on there. So... I'm sure that will change as time goes on, but look at the paint job from Seb Levine on these. Absolutely mental. Now choose your own path. And again, unfortunately, you won't be able to see the extra miniatures at the present time. But these are the treetop ones, the lost ones, the hunt, and the ancestors. So these are the different types of creatures. Now, whether they are going to be per an act, I don't know. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not going to work in terms of the website at the moment. But amazing. This one was shown all painted up, and it's kind of got like wicking all over it, and then it's on fire. Crazy. This kind of lost one. Look at this, the mother or whatever it's called. This pregnant woman who's got wings. Very odd. And then like the hunt with these kind of these different creatures that you'll see, and then the ancestors of the island, maybe, or even your ancestors. Really, really interesting. Will you achieve the great goal and find King Haakon? Is he a friend or is he a foe? Is he alive or is he dead? Who will you meet along the way? So in the black box will be all the miniatures, I believe, and inside there will be the mysteries for each scenario. And again, this is the important thing, right? Madness or reality. I already read in the ship miniature that it was a horrendous storm. It was so much going on, yet they survived. They ended up on this island. How did that happen? Or is it reality? Or is it someone who's still in Norway or whatever, still thinking about maybe going on a trip? I don't know. It could be anything. Oh, here we go. Here's some painted miniatures of them. So the Mother, the Juggernaut. Look at that. The Herald, front and back. The little imp. I mean, look at these miniatures. They're pretty grotesque, but my god, they're cool. The Mourner. Wow. Just crazy. And we're talking pretty big here. Here's Right Busters. So the player characters are about the same size as that. 35. I think they're 35 mil. But then you're going to get some pretty large scale stuff. And then the videos, of course. So why am I excited for this game? The most important reason why I'm excited about this game is because of its narrative focus for this game. As you'll see, if you play the Tabletop Simulator or watch the live through, you'll notice that they've got when you first reveal a threat to turn it into a hostile, it gives you flavor text about describing what this thing is. When you come to those saga tokens, there's lots of flavor. The story and the writing is top notch. Really is top notch. It's in a Viking setting. It's got that kind of supernatural side, but all very much linked in Norse lore and religion. I love it. I love it, and the game plays really well as well. It's basically tests with dice, so it's nothing new. It's nothing new and nothing really that innovative in terms of that. But to tie it all into the stories and progressing the campaign forward, that is the main reason why I'm really excited about this. I think having it as a dedicated solo mode is really strong and really important for many people. And having it so it is replayable, taking different paths, upgrading characters differently to have... Yeah, of course, the overarching stories will probably be very similar. I don't know if they're going to have alternative endings. Who knows? To have these different acts that have different scenarios, superb. You know, it could lend itself to potentially... a Hell the Last Saga 1.2 or 2.0 or something with new scenarios. You might be able to get new scenario packs. I don't know. That's thinking way ahead. Let's get the game first and see how good it really is. The miniatures, fantastic. I mean, I'm a massive miniatures fan. I love miniatures. I think it really pops the board. I love the idea of a camp and having scenarios based in that camp. Very similar to things like Oathsworn and the Gloomhaven, I guess, and many things like that, where you kind of got your scenarios linked to expeditions, exploration, finding out about these NPCs, and maybe going on adventures with them. But then to have that kind of camp scenario where it won't literally just be upgrade, heal, It's not going to be that. It's going to be an actual scenario, a narratively driven scenario based on the camp. That excites me. I think that is going to be cool. You're going to really feel like you built that society, you built that clan, you built that homestead. But is it going to be permanent? We don't know. This hunt, whatever it is, it could be literally driving you out of that camp and then spreading you out. And it's all based on this King Haakon. What happened to King Haakon, your leader? And what befell him in that 1 year. These MPs, I mean, that really excites me as well, is the fact that they're really pushing the idea of the NPCs as pushing the narrative of it. And a lot of them seem to be past members of King Haakon's clan, and I'm sure they will give you different insights and different ideas and different viewpoints about King Haakon and how he's going to be involved in everything. So that's really exciting for myself. You've got all the save on there. You've got the you've got these characters which you'll be able to upgrade and change and make unique. You've got a kind of semi-co-op nature to it that they've talked about. I personally really like that in the sense that you're not You're not trying to be a traitor and screw over the other players. That doesn't sound like that's what they're after. You're still going to need to complete the scenario, right? Like you saw in my playthrough of Scenario 1 of Tabletop Simulator, I failed the first time. It's tough, and I like the fact it's tough. I think that's really important. So I like the difficulty of the game, and the fact that, you know, when I failed that, you read a passage, and again, what's the key here? It's the narrative. What drives the whole game? It's the narrative, and it talks about this was a premonition. You think it's like a deja vu, and then it starts the story again, and you're coming to the island, and you're about to blow the horn to go, we're here, and you go, actually no, I've had this premonition. I don't think it's a good idea. And how they do that, they showcase that idea on the board, so there's no threats because you've not alerted them to your presence. Very, very clever. And this is literally a demo scenario. So they are going to be changing this slightly, but that really holds positive in me, in the sense that it's going to really hit the narrative hard. That's what it's going to be about. It's going to be about the story. They've got those 4... in fact, I think they might well say it somewhere here. Hold on. Where it says meet the team. Because I think they're going to have to be recognised, right? Here we go. So obviously got the good game developers, and a fair amount of them. And of course they've got the artists. Love the arts and the sculpts, all fantastic. Seb Levine, as always, my word. But is it in here? Oh, it's not. But they got these. I'm sure it's 4 actual authors who are doing all the story. Maybe it's in the game developer. Sorry, I don't know who it is off the top of my head. But you know, to have that quality of writing going on is super. It was definitely in one of the updates. Sorry, I don't know that off by heart. But having that narrative as the key, and what drives the game, and what's the point. Now, that being said, if you are more wanting game mechanics over everything, and kind of moving through that, then this may not be the game for you, right? Because something like Champions of Midgard, which is a fantastic game, worker placement, action selection, it's a superb game, but it's not got story to it. But the mechanics and the gamification of that game is brilliant. It's based in Norse, in Viking setting, so you do get the feel of Vikings, and you're kind of fighting these different creatures, these myths. You've set in sail for them. So when I say it hasn't got any story, you know, no written story, as it were. You make your own stories up. This is going to be very much a almost like a playable book, I guess. It's a narrative survival horror board game, as it says. So if that's not your thing, and you know, and you don't want a campaign, you don't want hours and hours of gameplay to fill out a story, then of course this is perhaps not the game. But if you are after, and it does seem like these are becoming more and more frequent and more and more popular in these kind of narrative games, these campaign games, but it's not overboard. I think, you know, Gloomhaven, fantastic game, don't get me wrong, but I played the first kind of 7 or 8 scenarios, really enjoyed it, really did enjoy it, and to be honest, it is a game I want to get back. I do want to play it, from the start, but it was so daunting in terms of how much there was, and yeah, it just felt like it would be a bit of a chore. Now, this could certainly go the same way. I have a feeling it won't, because it seems so different in terms of each scenario, that it won't be very similar, and that was my slight problem. And the other thing was, now you might like this or not like this, the fact that you don't choose a character and follow that character all the way through the campaign. I like the fact that it's going to be different characters you play, and it's more about the clan that you get invested in as a group of players. I really like that as a slightly different edge on how to play it. And Mythic have got a bit of a history of this. So if you think about Solomon Kane, which is coming out. You don't play as characters, you play as virtues that influence Solomon Kane through his adventures. And that, again, is very much a narrative-based game. So I think when Solomon Kane comes out and gets played, that will give us a good kind of, a little bit of a premise of how Hell the Last Saga might kind of work out in terms of how does that narration go forward. But in terms of the setting, I think that's a really positive for me as well. And Mythic Games, I absolutely love their miniatures. I think their miniatures are some of the best in the board game industry. Yeah, you can go to like Forge World and things like that, where you're talking about just ridiculous miniatures. But in terms of board game, not to be assembled, all completely assembled, pre-assembled miniatures, fantastic. These look amazing, and I'm sure they will when they come out. Little bit disappointed that they've not got textured bases. Personally, you know, we look at Solomon Kane, Reichbusters, Super Fancy Brawl, and I really appreciate the fact they've got those textured bases. It's not a deal breaker. I mean, I don't mind doing a bit of basing myself, but it does mean that you do need to do that. But when you consider you've got very few exact sculpts, like multiples, it's going to make it painting really exciting. So the miniatures, of course, are a big plus as well. Obviously, a negative to it is the cost. I mean, it's not super cheap. You can go to GameFound and pledge, and I believe we can probably have a look. So if we just put in Hell. So if you go Hell, the Last Saga, you will find it here, and let's have a little look. $129, which is exactly the same. So the late pledge, which you can do through this, it's same price. That's going to be open, they said, until very early 2021, so plenty of time to get on Tabletop Simulator, let's say, and just have a go and see if it's something you would like. But, you know, it's not cheap. You're talking about $129. You're going to talk about shipping as well, to put on top of that. You know, that's not a small amount of money. So it's got to be something that you do want to play. But it seems like a big investment, right? I think you're going to get a lot out of this. I can't remember how many hours they said in total. Did it say here? Maybe not. No, I don't think it did. But yeah, it's going to be a lot, right? A lot of gameplay there, and it seems like some replayability as well, which I do appreciate. I mean, I've played the first two Tabletop Simulator mods several times now, probably about 7 or 8 times now, and I don't get bored of them. It's so good. Different things happen pretty much every single time as well, because you might choose different characters to take forward, and how they interact with each other and how they combo can change. You're seeing different actions being taken. The threats can work differently. The fate cards can make it very different in terms of how you play that scenario. So I think they've put enough things into this game, it seems, for each scenario that makes it random enough to be different for each gameplay. Okay? Yeah, of course, if you played it loads and loads, you start to see pretty much identical playthroughs. But yeah, with the idea that it's campaign and it's persistent, I think, yeah, we'll see a lot of replayability, which again is another plus as well. Another negative could be the size. Again, they're not going to be small boxes. I mean, if we saw that update, I don't think... Did I put it on here? No, previous one. If we have a little look, because this will give you an idea. If we go to previous... Deluxe, this one. So if we look at this, this is the big dice. So this is like a big dice, and this is the character board. And look at the size of this. This is no miniatures. So, and that's a tile that you're going to be able to fit 6 miniatures on. So, if that's one of the boxes, and then you got another box that could potentially be bigger if it's for miniatures. Again, we're not talking about small size, right? So, you know, that could be a negative to you, or it might be a positive. You might go, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to get a massive game, which is inevitably what this is going to be. But I hope they don't spoil things as best they can for Hell. I hope they don't spoil the story any more than they have done in the little snippets. I love the fact that those updates have got some inklings of what might be happening in the story, and certainly how it's going to go about. But they've given us no definites, and the fact that these 2 Tabletop Simulator mods are enough to give us an idea of how these 2 different types of scenarios might play, and how the mechanics work of the game. I really like that. It means that we can play those, and then when you get the game fully, you're not starting from scratch. You kind of have an idea, so you don't need that kind of tutorial missions, as it were. I mean, inevitably there probably will be. Most games, especially campaign games, they try and ease you into it, and then they start to build up upon that. I'm sure Hell the Last Saga will be the same. But having that little sneak peek beforehand is fantastic. But I don't want to know any more. Which I you know, I want that to be the kind of the surprise when I play the game for the first time. So yeah, I think we're just on a waiting game now. I think they said June 21. Yeah, June 21 is when they plan to be released. But obviously with COVID at the moment and delays going for Mythic's other games, I wouldn't be surprised if this gets delayed as well. Of course, fingers crossed it doesn't. But of course, I think you know, it may well do. Solomon Kane, I think we've had Joan of Arc through. Yes, there were issues with the rulebooks, errata for scenarios and all the rest of it. That will be sorted out for the 1.5 Joan of Arc that will be delivered in 2021. So great, but for those like myself who backed the original, I didn't mind it. I mean, I just loved the game so much that I didn't mind the fact that, you know, it had some ambiguity in the rules and the scenario. You just play through it and it kind of it works. But I love that game. Before Super Fantasy Brawl came out, it was my favourite game in total. Yes, it took a certain type of gamer to want to play it, of course. You're talking about a large setup time, which I don't think this will have. So that's a positive to it, I guess. Because you do those saves, and then as long as they got a space in the box where you can put the saved stuff. So when you open up these boxes, they've got components for like scenario 1 or whatever. Can you easily put those back? And do you know exactly where you left off? What about all of the cards and the upgrades that your characters have got? As long as they've thought about that and put a space in the box, like a save space, I guess you can call it, then I'll be pleased. If they haven't, that might be a bit of a negative. And that could definitely be quite annoying if you have to like remember, if you have to write everything down and then get it all out of its original place, that would increase the setup time quite exponentially. So hopefully they've thought about that and that has changed. But yeah, Joan of Arc was a long time to set up, but when it's set up, it looks so epic, and I love the game. The mechanics, the scenarios, it's superb, and the miniatures are absolutely sublime for the 16mm scale. So that came out, loved that. Right Busters came out, I didn't back that. But then Super Fantasy Brawl came out, and I demoed this at conventions, and I saw through those demos how good it was and how much people loved it. So I knew it was going to be a hit as soon as it released. I just wanted it to get released so people can see how good that game was. We received it, and man, did it not disappoint. The miniatures, the art and the cards, the components, absolutely superb. And it is by far my favourite game now. It's quick. Pretty much anyone can play it. You can play simply and just for a bit of fun. You can play competitively. You start to learn all the combos, all the cards, and play really competitively. When organised play comes next year, and the retail comes, hopefully this scene will start to pick up when we can. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. So for me, yeah, it took a bit of time for Mythic to deliver, but now they have a few games. It's quite good. It's brought back confidence, and hopefully it has. We've got to wait for Solomon Kane. I mean, Steam Watchers, not Steam Watchers. Enchanters is coming from their Phoenix line soon, and then Solomon Kane. It looks like it might be It might be in 2021 now when that will be delivered. So yet another delay, and of course, the elephant in the room, waiting years for Solomon Kane. But for me, I've started to get a lot of my Kickstarters that I backed literally years ago. And I don't mind that if the game is good. If the game has been polished and it's really good and it's the best it possibly can, I don't think people mind too much about those delays. The problem is if it gets delayed, and then the game's not quite right. That's when people, rightly so, get quite annoyed. So I demoed, I played Solomon Kane at a convention, so I was one of the punters, and I loved it in its original iteration. I thought it was so good. The table talk, the cooperative nature of it, the virtues, the miniatures, of course, were sublime, and the different scenarios again, very similar to Hell, very similar to Solomon Kane. It seems in terms and Joan of Arc, where you've got very unique scenarios that play differently, use the same mechanics but play very differently, and Solomon Kane's very much like that as well. So very excited to get Solomon Kane, and I cannot wait to see if it's kept its essence from way back when I demoed it. But fingers crossed. We just need to get those games in our hands so that the hype can be real. But I'm really hopeful, and I hope all of my optimism is rewarded when the game comes to our hands. And I'm sure it will be. I think no one can deny that Mythic Games is games. If you're that sort of player, for the games, of course, they do deliver these very, I would say, unique and fantastic games. Now, I'm obviously biased. Of course, I'm biased. I do love Mythic Games. I'm a games master for them. I do some demos for them in conventions and things like that. So, of course, I am biased towards them, but there's a reason for that. From Joan of Arc, moving forward to Super Fantasy Brawl, and then I'm just hopeful that the next ones will be the same. But with any Kickstarter, with any game as well, you've got to decide: is it something that I would like, that I would play, and has it got the things that I want in a game? I just feel that a few of the little snippets from those updates really help to make that, make it give some ideas and give some clues to how those Tabletop Simulator mods are going to be expanded. So, that's why I'm excited about Hell, the Last Saga. And it'd be really interesting if you can chuck in your comments below about what are you excited about Hell and why are you excited about it? What are your worries about the game, and just in general, really. It'd be really cool to find out, see what you guys are thinking, and as we wait, as we do the long wait for the game to be delivered. So, as I say, anyone with Tabletop Simulator can literally get on there, search for Hell, Hel. And you'll find the mods on Hell. What you do is in the workshop. I could probably show you that actually. In fact, I'm going to do that. So it's trying to get that Tabletop Simulator to as many people as That's what Mythic want, to get it to many people as they can, to try out the game and see if it's something they'll be interested in. They do seem to represent the actual game really quite well, and they've got like the 3D renders of the miniatures, so you can kind of see what it would look like. Of course, anything on a virtual program will not be anything like the real thing in front of you on the board. Of course it won't. And especially when we talk about all this miniatures and this narrative idea, maybe even like buildings and all the rest of it, the camp phase, it's not going to be the same. It really is not going to be the same, but it'll give you an idea. So yeah, you can still get it on GameFound. It's still late pledge available. They're even doing like I didn't know they did this, weathering paint job option. Cool. The the Pledge Manager add-ons, including the weathering. There's a sleeve plaque, the faux leather dice bag, and that premium box tray, which is quite cool. Hopefully a bit more refined than the game trays that we got in Super Fantasy Brawl, but it looks as though from the pictures they're definitely going to be fitting in the box really well and enabling sleeved cards and all the rest of it. You've got all the add-ons as well, of course, so everything's there that's still available, and as I say, it's going to be for a while that it's open for. Okay, so I'm just going to show you, because I think it's important, I'm just going to show you the on Steam where you go to, because I think a lot of people didn't realise that what I'm going to show you actually exists. And I haven't seen any kind of tutorials, to be honest, linked to that. So if you have to buy Tabletop Simulator, it's if you like, a game, a program on Steam. Tabletop Simulator, if you find it. I don't know if it's on sale at the moment. It certainly was during the con, I believe. But once you go to Tabletop Simulator, if it will load it for me, let's change my. Hang on. I'm just aware that we're still looking at a GameFound stream. So if I change this, here we go. I wasn't planning on doing this, so bear with me. So Steam. There we go. So if I show you Steam, once you get to here, you want the workshop. Go to workshop, and that'll bring up the workshop, which is kind of like community content. You know, like what people call mods on games and so forth. And when you get to this, there's pretty much every single game you can imagine that's been made by effectively the community. Now, some people, some board game companies will pay people, I think, to make these mods, but most of the time they're just literally fan made. Some are better than others, some are scripted, and as I said, they're nowhere near as good as if you had the actual game. That is 100% true. Okay, so please be aware. What just happened? Please be aware of that. So, what you would do is in Tabletop Simulator, you search for any game you want. In this case, I'm searching for Hell. Mind my slow computer here. And then once you've searched for that, wow, it's really slowing down. You'll find both in English and French the two versions. So here is Scenario 1. Here is Scenario 2. To get the games, you literally just click on this. There'll be a little subscribe button, or you could go to it itself, to the page itself, and you can click on. You subscribe to them. Now they're not massive. This one's, for example, 0.2 megabytes. We're not talking about a lot. Most of it's just streamed, so you just need an internet. So you just click on subscribe, and the next time you go into Tabletop Simulator, it will be there when you open up the board. Okay? In the workshop section. I haven't read these actually. But anyway. There you go. They've put on here, so you can just see like some snapshots of what it looks like. They put on here like how to use Tabletop Simulator, the rule book, and then the songbook, and then they set up the board. So it's all pre-set up, all the resources are the same, and everything else you need. So there's Scenario 1 and there's Scenario 2. Where we're going. So here's Scenario 2 from Song 1. So if you're English speaking, you can download those. If you're French speaking, you can download those. And then once you've got them, you can basically play with your friends, like you can do across online by using Tabletop Simulator. So it's definitely worth having a go at those. I would highly recommend that. Just getting your game group together, or even solo, and just have a go through it and see what you think, see what your story leads to. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to talk about. I hope there are other people out there who are as excited about this game as I am. And I heard about this game years and years ago. Well, years ago, not years and years and years ago. And then when obviously the Kickstarter happened, and then the stretch goals getting met and everything else. Very, very exciting. And now the Tabletop Simulator mod, and being able to play the actual game, see those mechanics in action, although not in real life, which is a real shame because that would be amazing. That would be phenomenal. But it's not ages and ages to wait. It says June 21. Maybe we're looking at September. I mean, who knows? We really don't know the situation. We've got everything blowing up at the moment. So at some point in 2021, hopefully we get this through and we get to play. I mean, I've got plenty of board games to play anyway, as is the nature of board games and the hobby. But I'm really excited about them for the reasons that I've talked about, and especially reading those updates and finding out a bit more about the lore. The writing seems absolute top notch. The story seems good. The Tabletop Simulator mods, they really showcase that kind of narrative drive. So very, very much looking forward to this. And I'm aware that's now 2 hours I've just nattered on about. But please do chuck down in the description what you think, and are you looking forward to it as well? So thanks for watching this slightly different video. I will be cracking on with the live stream painting, hopefully very soon, to finish Super Fantasy Brawl. I have finished all of the tokens, so I've now finished all the tokens, which is really nice, because you could say that's the boring bit, but they're going to really pop on the board. And I have been playing the game on the solo mode that I'm kind of thinking about developing. I've played a bit more of that and try and do the balance. I took a really strong team and absolutely destroyed the AI, so there's definite balancing to do. I don't think it's going to be ready at the end of this week, as I said it probably would be, but hopefully I'll get out the kind of like the final idea of what I was thinking, and then you guys can see what you think. Okay,